Hi everyone, welcome back to the Watch Insider. My name is Brian. I am joined tonight by Tim Masso.
Howdy, folks.
And thank you all for logging on. So we've got an exciting show tonight. We've got great watches here on the table. We've got a couple of announcements. As always, the Wednesday night show, please feel free to ask any questions about watches in general. Tim and I are here to answer.
We got some high horology on the table tonight, guys. By the way, I want to make a quick declaration about our giveaway. We've actually picked a name, but we haven't heard back from the person. When we have two-way communication, we are going to announce the winner, but someone's been picked. I promised you that much. Now we just have to make sure the guy gets through to us before we set up disappointment. Two-way communication, and the watch goes out. By the way, those of you who entered, I think there were over 10,000 of them? 10,000 unique entries. It was our biggest entry so far. I'm happy to say we surpassed the Rolex from December. So
Can you believe that? That's
Omega.
crazy.
Isn't that?
But that's awesome. And, I really wanted to make the announcement that we were going to be announcing the name until at the end of the show to keep you guys all watching. Tim, being the gentleman that he is, decided to do it at the beginning.
Okay, guys, I just want to let you know, above all, we've got the best set of watches on the table that we have ever had on this show. So if you showed up for the watches, you're going to get the watches. Let's go with an overdog. Let's open with our biggest gun. Show me what you're wearing first, because some folks haven't seen this piece.
So I am wearing and I have a similar one here on the table. So I am wearing a 37 millimeter Roger Dubuis Sympathy. So this watch is from around 2000 to 2001. It is a bi-retrograde perpetual calendar. I've worn it on the show before. It's one of his early pieces. What drew me to the watch early on was the shape of the case. I'd never seen anything like it before. It was a 37 millimeter that fit a little bit larger because of the lugs. And you could really see the attention to detail that he put in these early watches. I mean, you've got a Geneva seal perpetual calendar movement. You've got the bi-retrogrades, which are, to this day, even a hallmark of the brand. And these crystals in particular were cut specifically for the shape of this case, which was very expensive to do. Shortly after the release of these watches, the crystals themselves actually, in order to produce them at a lesser price, cut round crystals for this shaped case. So I had been hunting one of these for a while. We had taken one in that was this watch, but a chrono. And to be honest, it was just too thick for me. I thought that the watch was just too thick, and this one came in and was perfection.
It's a wonderful case, and it was actually conceived originally by a Valet de Joux case maker on a sort of commission to the original Sogem company that became Roger Dubuis. A real cool background. What you're actually looking at inside the case is a Geneva hallmark Breguet 8815, originally born the Longines L990, a twin-barrel high horology ultra-thin auto, Geneva hallmark, and a French observatory chronometer. So the Besançon chronometer certificate accorded to this watch, and if you look at the original certificate, it actually names Roger Dubuis as the reguleur, the one who actually regulated the watch. You've got a rich enamel dial. You do have a perpetual calendar, and you have a perpetual calendar module that Dubuis and Jean-Marc Viderecht of Agenor actually created back in the late 1980s for the first high horology Harry Winston perpetual calendar retrograde. So it has a wonderful background, both module and base caliber. Great piece. And that's Brian's personal watch, guys.
Yeah, so Mark Guard, you all trying to clear your vaults, but this one's not for me. Unfortunately, Mark, this one is not for sale. This is my personal watch. So we are actually not trying to clear the vault with this one.
I'm not trying to clear the vault here. In fact, you can't have it. This is my Zin Easy M11. Most of the folks who know what it is generally say, I hate you, you got one. So I'm not letting go of this. 43 millimeters, tegmented steel, lefty chrono, and a wonderful minimalist dial. They re-engineered a 7750 to run with a central chronograph minutes hand, and it's actually a 60-minute register rather than a 30. So a very basic watch, richly loomed, bidirectional mission timer bezel. The chronograph counts up, and the bezel, if you look at it, actually counts down. A wonderful piece and part of a 500 series from 2017. Stainless steel. It's actually a tribute to the 1997 Easy M1, which was titanium. But a lovely piece. I wear it every day. It gets beat on, and it doesn't show any scratches. Doesn't show any scuffs. Doesn't show any wear and tear.
And I think that, one of the other features that drew me to this particular watch is the concept that brands that started in the, call it, mid to late 90s, that for the brand itself, and it's similar to Journe in this way, is that, call it early 2000s, is really vintage for the brand. And these watches are still obtainable at a pretty compelling price, and I actually do see a lot of upside in them and their future value, because I think that collectors do take notice of these early Dubuis.
Also, the thing about Roger Dubuis, unlike almost every other brand that was launched in the 90s and succeeded and grew, is that instead of increasing production of highly sought watches like you saw with everyone from FP Journe to, in the early 2000s, MB&F, later Grubel Forsey, FP Journe grew. Roger Dubuis, from a classicist standpoint, built most of its most interesting watches between 95 and 2000. And after that, the kind of person who buys that watch was not shopping Dubuis anymore.
So let's move on to this particular piece right here. So I've brought other examples of this model on the show before, but never something like this. So as I've talked about previously, I myself had a deep stream Vacheron Overseas. This is a series or version 2 Vacheron Overseas chronograph. You've got the screw down pushers. You've got the big date window at 12 o'clock. Is it a Frederick Bouquet movement?
It is.
So it's a Frederick Bouquet movement. And what drew me to this watch is A, I just love the model. B, I think that the Vacheron Overseas line in general, particularly this version of the watch and even the newest version of the watch, is very much overlooked in this whole sports watch craze. And if you're looking to get an all gold watch, particularly, and obviously in this case, an all rose gold watch, and you've looked at the Patek 5711 1R, you've looked at the 5980/1 rose, you've looked at the APs, you've looked at Rolex. Like, to me, this offers a very compelling option where the pricing is very reasonable at this point. You're getting a Vacheron Constantin, you're getting a cool watch, and you're getting a watch that you're really not going to see on anybody else's wrist.
I'll also say this. I'm waiting to do a run-up between this and the Audemars Piguet Royal Oak Offshore Brick. I'm just waiting for one of those to show up. I would actually take the Vacheron. Having experienced both, I find the Vacheron more wearable, more elegant, better detailed, and more substantial. Yes, more substantial on the wrist. I'll also say this. Between the compound movement on the AP and the admittedly outsourced but fully integrated caliber in the Vacheron, I'll take the Vacheron. Look at the side profile. This is a watch that has Royal Oak offshore wrist presence, but it has the compact dimensions of a Royal Oak chronograph, meaning you've got a rare sports watch that can do battle with both the Royal Oak and the offshore. And I'll say this particular rose gold variant is one of the rarest of the second gen Overseas chronos. You generally saw them on straps, you generally saw them on bracelets, but you generally saw them in steel. And full gold is both decadent and distinctly Vacheron. After all, it is Holy Trinity, and this watch lives up to that legend. I'll also say, you're looking at a second gen because it was the first generation Maltese cross bracelet, and they later lost the double date at 12 o'clock. That is perhaps the most lamented loss from the second generation to the third. A wonderful combination, and possibly the best of the Overseas generations.
And one of the other really nice features of this watch that is similar to the steel versions of the watch is that you can take the bracelet off of this watch and you can put on a brown, call it brown or black rubber strap and a buckle. You can put on a Croco leather strap. So you can have a watch that is very multi-dimensional. Whereas watches from similar brands don't give you that same level of dimensionality.
I want to give a quick shout out to some of the folks who are watching right here. We've got Turkischer Meister, and he's joining us from Istanbul, where it's 2:21 a.m. Thank you, our intrepid viewer from Turkey, staying up late to the point of early with us. And we've got an engineering student, Jess8414, and he's got class in 10 minutes. Thank you for joining us while you can. I see Edward Ledden is saying that's a Russian gangster watch. While I show you my wrist shot, just to give you a sense of the size of this watch on the wrist, I remind you, this is not a Russian gangster watch. In order, those include Hublot, Ulysse Nardin, Frank Muller, and Richard Mille. Vacheron barely registers. Maybe this is the fifth on the scale of Russian gangster watches, distinct fifth behind Ulysse Nardin, which is probably your fourth, and then only in yellow gold. It's a lovely watch, and it's very wearable. It's only about 12.5 millimeters thick.
Awesome. So guys, please, welcome everybody, obviously, but, keep the questions coming. If there's anything that you're wondering about watches on the table or anything in general, Tim and I are here to answer questions. Why don't we move along to let's call it polar opposite end of the spectrum.
Okay.
But this is a watch that performed remarkably well was a limited edition, 155 pieces. We've talked about the merits of this model before. So this is actually a brand new watch, but I was so enamored with it that I wanted to bring it onto the show to show off. So this is a TAG Heuer blue ceramic tourbillon and it's the Viper edition. So it was limited to 155 pieces. It's completely sold out everywhere. I think this is one of the last ones in the States. And I absolutely love this watch. For the money, just over $20,000 retail. To me, this watch is hard to beat, and I believe, and it may not still be the case, but it may be the only COSC certified tourbillons on the market.
Well, there certainly have been other COSC certified tourbillon. This one's actually the Tête de Viple, so it actually has a French Besançon chronometer observatory chronometer certificate. All of the other TAG tourbillon are COSC, as Brian notes, and that is exceptionally rare, and you really have to find elite and scarce calibers to combine those traits. This is actually one of 3 Besançon chronometers on the table tonight, as we have the Tête de Viple, and then we also have the 2 Roger Dubuis early pieces. Now, the watch is remarkable because it is all blue ceramic, and so gorgeous, but also because you have a COSC certified flying tourbillon automatic chronograph, and note, it is a flying tourb with no upper bridge. Can we get super close, guys? How close can the camera get? You can see that it is a mechanically finished tourbillon regulator, so not the ultimate in high horology, but in terms of the complication you're getting and the reliability of it, it can't be beat. Vertical clutch and column wheel chronograph. This is the Heuer 02 base that has been tourbillized, I guess you could say. And you can see there's not a whole lot to see on the case back because all the action is on the front, and it's 100 meters water resistant, so it's a rare tourbillon that you can use for swimming in good conscience. This is a really cool pick. I'm glad you brought this watch.
Yeah, no, I mean, since they first launched this reference, I've been a big fan of this line for the brand. I know that there was a period in TAG Heuer's history where they were making, call it, $45,000 to $60,000 watches that were similar to this, which I think went, way above price point. And that's not to say that at a little over $20,000 that, it's relatively expensive for a TAG Heuer. But I think that this watch checks a lot of very cool boxes where it happens to be good value for the money.
Great question, but I mean, with a TAG tourbillon this size, this style, with this many features, it's got to cannibalize some Hublot. Like, I get the Hublot guys going first for the name, second for the watch, but this is a lot more impressive.
Yeah,
I'd rather have that.
Especially, again, I think the execution of the blue ceramic, I was very happy with just having both the brush and high polish finish. Just a very well designed and executed watch. And, you've got the gummy croco right here, so it's a croco look, but it's a rubber strap, just executed very nicely. Okay. Any questions here so far?
And we got a lot of comments from folks. We have BKAR 421. This is TAG's return to glory? They actually took a step back to take a step forward a few years ago, culling a lot of the really high-end pieces and focusing on like the $1,500 to $6,500 watch. We've seen the Monaco, the Ottavia.
Yeah, I think they went back to their bread and butter, and they really wanted to take the market share back in let's call it their core price category. And then they came out with watches like this to, I think, help build the brand and build the prestige of the brand further.
And I agree with that. I think $20,000 is a good cap on what a super high-end TAG should be. I don't think they need $1 million watches or $50,000 watches.
No, this is exactly what they need. And to be honest, like again, for them to sell out 155 of these worldwide as quickly as they did, is I think a testament to how well the watch itself is doing.
It is a beautiful watch. That blue ceramic is gorgeous. Question coming from Andle. He's asking, are tourbillon less than 15,000 reliable? I would say that's probably the most reliable tourbillon you're going to find. You'd be amazed how many tourbillon watches I've seen, including the Fugaku tourbillon, that are, watches that are going to run 20 to 30 seconds off a day by design. Like, it's really unusual to find a $15,000 to $20,000 tourbillon, but the fact that TAG used the running gear of the Heuer 02, slaps a regular TAG warranty on it, and then goes big instead of going home by getting a chronometer certification on the full watch, that's really impressive. And I actually think a lot of high horology pieces are less reliable than you'd imagine and way less accurate.
Yeah. So we've got really cool other watches on the table. We'll save the Rolex for last. Why don't we show off should we do the Journe or the Dubuis?
Let's do the Dubuis. I think the Journe is going to be like our big finish.
Fine, so let's do the Dubuis. So this recently came in. And, I feel like the feeling on this particular case is that you either love it or you hate it. So this watch here, same size as my watch, same metal, produced during the same time period, except this is a time-only version of the watch. So 37 millimeter, definitely thinner than my watch, but I think no less cool.
I think another cool feature of this watch is its simplicity. No date, perfectly balanced style, old school with an exciting, and one might even say slightly avant-garde case. It looks like a case as Salvador Dali might have designed it. It seems like a fluid that's been flash frozen while melting. You can also see that it has some hard points, so it's not just the curves, it's also some sharp creases and character lines. Turn it all over, you got that same basic Longines L990 double mainspring barrel automatic Geneva hallmark, Besançon chronometer, very slim, strong lugs for its size. These lugs are very insistent, massive. As you can see, they're welded style lugs, and they have a lot of character. A 37mm watch, but with the wrist presence of a far bigger timepiece. One of the hidden gems of the case and dial design, actually the lacquer of the dial, which seems glossy, lustrous, and bottomless in the right light. I also want to showcase the fact that it features the fabled integrity disc. Dubuis, a big fan of Patek Philippe, he'd worked there for a generation, and just as Patek, in its first generations of display caseback watches, would give you the precious metal caseback and the sapphire, so too did Roger Dubuis give you both when you bought the watch. So it's not like you're getting shorted an ounce of gold in favor of a 30 Swiss franc sapphire.
Yeah, and you know what? I think that, for me, one of the big, everybody likes watches for different reasons. And for me, I really like having something that is a conversation piece and that's interesting to look at and that I myself enjoy looking at more so than caring what anybody else thinks of the watch. And as I've said, I've never seen any other case quite like it. And I think that if you look across a table and you see a sympathy case, you know exactly what it is and you know exactly who made it. And nowadays, that's one of the most defining, sought-after features of a watch that all the brands are chasing after is that watch that when you're 10 feet away from somebody, do you know what that person's wearing?
Yeah. And Dubuis got it right out of the gate, and frankly, they should circle around because they now have the movement and manufacture aspects mastered. They should go back to the old designs. So, quick acknowledgments. I can see Daniel Fernandez joining us from Mexico, and Mark Destroyer asking, why is Maurice Lacroix almost unknown? They seem kind of impressive. Well, they are a very impressive manufacturer, and they've invested hugely in building every part of the watch. The problem, I think it's down to design, as we were just discussing. Iconic design is really the key. It's the hook. It's what gets the client in the door. I think Maurice Lacroix invested in making every part of a watch, but then failed to design a watch as compelling as the pieces. I will say the square wheel is very cool. Very cool, especially the fast-running versions of it. But again, that's just a dial feature. You need a shape, and then you need a dial, and last you need a movement.
I also think that the watches, from a price point perspective,
when new, yes.
When new are expensive in a way that there's a lot of other brands that offer competition at the price point. And what happens is if you've got an amazing watch, but you're now competing against brands like Vacheron, like Patek, like Jaeger-LeCoultre, not to say that these brands don't have watches at all different price points, but you're competing for market share against them, and they offer a much better proposition in terms of brand awareness, brand value, and value retention, which I think is something very important in the buying decision now is, if I buy this watch, what is this watch going to be worth after I own it? And when you're faced with a lot of different choices, one of which will lose X percent and one loses a lot more, it's hard to just buy the one that it's a lot bigger of a loss.
I would also say a lot of their manufacturer movement watches are just huge. Like they're dress watches that are 43, 44, 45, and it's too much. So I think what they're making is very expensive in a lot of cases, though impressive, and sized a bit out of step with current taste. I'll also say it's tough when you have so many past watches that are selling for so little relative to their original retail. When you can get a Maurice Lacroix annual calendar flyback chronograph from the Masterpiece collection for $3,000 on Chrono 24, it's tough to make the case for a modern new build Maurice Lacroix for $15,000.
Yeah, and that's why again there's the secondary market reflects the primary market, and if you're going to come out with new watches year in and year out, you need to make sure that your secondary market is strong and that it supports the new product. And I think that, any brand, anybody that's working in a brand, or anybody in general that knows watches, would agree with that.
And there's not a whole lot of attrition in the watch market. On the pre-owned car market, a new manufacturer like Ford or Mercedes, it's competing with its older cars for maybe 6 model years, after which they tend to age out of the market. A watch that's 6 years old is just getting worked in. So a car at that point is just about getting ready for the tail end of its operational life. So you have to compete with watches that are 10, 20, 30 years old and still saleable, serviceable, and appealing to customers, which is why I think pre-owned is a growth segment. I'm not sure the new watch market is going to grow quite as much as the pre-owned. I think pre-owned is bottomless. It's every watch ever made. And for me, it's more interesting on that basis.
So, should we do the big dog FP Journe right now?
Let's go with it. Let's do it.
Okay, so here we have an FP Journe repetition minute. And so this is a watch that was actually just recently discontinued, produced in stainless steel in small numbers. And one of the defining features of this watch, which you will see, are the minute repeater hammers on the front of the watch. And it is spectacular.
Okay, fire it up. 12:59, guys. Here it comes. Cool.
Exhale. Whew. Sweating a little bit there.
We'll do that one more time before the end of the show, I promise.
Yeah.
But yeah, great piece, first shown in 2008, launched in 2009. It's only 8.6 millimeters thick and about 40 millimeters in stainless steel. And that's a big deal, Brian. This is one of the few steel Journes you'll ever see.
Exactly. So he produces steel watches very rarely. I'd say the most recent, you have the steel set that he produced to end the 38 millimeter size watches. You have the steel
The Holland
and Holland piece, and you have this. And what's remarkable about this watch is the simplicity, how light it is, but at the same time, just having those hammers on the front. I think that, when you have a minute repeater watch, like, you want to show it off. You want to sit there, and anybody that will listen, anybody that you can talk to, you want to just be able to show them, hey, look how cool this is. Yeah. And if you have pretty much any other minute repeater watch, you have to take it off your wrist, which you're risking the thing falling to the ground.
Yeah, 9 times out of 10, that's where you break your watch.
Yeah, and you turn it over to show the person. But this, you can leave the watch on your wrist and show them the watch in action. And to me, it is absolutely awesome. And they did produce a stainless steel bracelet for this watch.
Oh, that's sweet.
And we nicknamed at the office this watch the beater repeater.
It almost is.
It is. It's an everyday beater repeater.
And it's low enough under the cuff that you could wear it with anything. Let me show you one more time how all of this works. I'm doing my best to work with my cameraman. I can't get too close. We're relatively close to the camera. But let me fire this up one more time. And first, let me show you how you set a minute repeater for maximum impact. This is how you impress your friends. You set it to 12:59. So you want to set the watch to 12:59 because the way the minute repeater communicates the time is it first communicates the hours, so it would go to 12, and then it communicates the quarters after the hour with double chimes. So it's 1-2, 1-2, 1-2, and then finally it ends with the number of minutes corresponding to minutes after the most recent quarter. So if, for example, it's, 59, you're going to hear quite a bit of action. Now, the nice thing about this watch is that it utilizes 2 patents. One reduces the size of the rack and snail that reads the time for the repeater, and one is for the scythe-shaped gongs. They're actually shaped like scythes. They're not conventional wire gongs that encircle the movement, as you'll find on other repeaters. So 2 patents, 8.6 millimeters thick, and yes, in case you were wondering and you're not familiar with current Journe, it has an 18-karat gold movement. So that's pretty cool. The slide is very minimal, as you can see. Fire it all up, and here goes. You know what you don't hear in there? You don't hear governor whine. It is a centrifugal governor with minimal noise produced. Basically a silent governor. All you hear is that sonorous melody, the tone, sustain, and volume of the chimes themselves.
Look at that polishing on the hammers, too.
Yeah, I'm not an FP Journe nerd. You guys know I've been constructively critical in the past. I have very little to argue here. This is a wonderful watch, objectively one of the best repeaters I've encountered.
Now the finishing on the hammer, it's almost like it's so polished that it's almost black.
Yeah, this is poly noir at its best. This is the real deal. This was all done by hand. When you see polish that is so optically smooth it directs lights only in one direction, as you turn it via certain orientations to the camera, you will see it turns black, reflecting light only in one direction, and that's the hammer we're talking about right there.
Yeah,
Plus,
this thing is awesome.
Blue numerals and railroad rather than black for this very special piece. And full clasp. You don't get full clasps on most Journe watches.
I mean, this thing is just so rad. Okay.
Okay.
So, wow, just wow. So, for everybody that is asking about the giveaway announcement, we talked about this at the beginning of the show. I can keep dragging this on for as long as possible to keep you watching, but as discussed at the beginning of the show, we've reached out to the winner of the watch. We're actually just waiting for the communication back. Once we have the two-way communication, we're going to release the winner. So chances are, if it doesn't happen soon, it's going to be announced on Monday. I mean, I have to assume that we've reached out multiple times to the person, so we're just waiting to hear back. And once we do, we will you will see the notification go out on who won.
Yeah, the last thing we need to hear is that some life or marriage was destroyed because some guy won it, didn't respond, and then it gets announced on the internet. But in any case, we've got a wonderful annual calendar, and I wanted the Journe to be the parting shot, but this might be technically just as impressive.
Yeah, so we are ending on a bang. So this is a blue dial stainless steel sky dweller. This is the watch of, call it everybody's dreams, the one that's impossible to find, and what an amazing watch it is. So, launched several years back. It's probably one of the hardest steel sports Rolexes to come by, even harder to come by than the stainless steel Daytona. So this is a pre-owned example, and to me, by far and away, my favorite of the Sky Dwellers.
Yeah, annual calendar GMT. It's interesting how the annual calendar expresses itself. You can see there's a little red square that pops into an aperture outboard of each hour index, 12 hours, 12 months. There's also a date. So between those two features, you can read the month and the date. The annual calendar is set using a ring command bezel. Normally, if you pull the crown out without setting ring command, it will do nothing. Nothing happens here. Second to 10, nothing's happening. You turn the bezel counterclockwise, and now you have the ability to set the date. You can see it in its cyclops eye moving back and forth, and significantly, you can actually set the date in both directions. See how it's jumping between 9 and 10? It's jumping between September and October. So both the date and the annual calendar function, the month display, they are bi-directional. No other Rolex watch gives you that functionality with the exception of the dual times, and they don't have annual calendars. Now you turn another click counterclockwise, and now you can move the stub hour hand. This is your local hour hand that drives the date. Note that the watch is still ticking. It's not hacked. I'm just moving the hour as I travel. Finally, I justify all the way counterclockwise, and now I set everything in sync. You can see that the 24-hour dial at center is moving, local hour is moving, and if I wanted, I could actually drive the date and calendar this way. But it has a quick set shortcut for every individual setting mode. Unhack all the way clockwise. Now you screw the crown back in, and somehow, in spite of all of that complication, you wind up with a watch that is 100 meters water resistant. And I should mention, not just 100 meters water resistant, but despite over 380 parts, as tough as any Rolex sports watch. And not as big as you think. 42 millimeters. I'm going to throw this one on the wrist real quick.
I was going to throw it on the wrist. You throw it on the wrist. You throw it on the wrist.
I'm a little bit closer to the camera. That's the only reason. But here's the thing. You think it's as big as a Yachtmaster. You think it's as big as something like a Deep Sea. It's not. It's really not that large at all. It's only 13.9 millimeters thick and 42 millimeters in diameter, which is to say it wears like an offshore 42 if an offshore 42 weren't actually a 45.
How amazing would this movement be in a Day-Date 40 case?
It would be monstrous if it fits.
I mean, if they could make that fit in a Day-Date 40 case, I mean, it's lights out.
This is just a monstrous watch. You got to remember the original version in full gold, the first version, the only one you could get, was 3 times the price of the steel model. 2017, this comes out, suddenly no one's talking about precious metal, and all of a sudden the Sky Dweller is hot.
Yeah. Okay. So do we have anything else here on the table? I think that is all that we have for tonight. So if there aren't any other questions, and you guys feel free, shoot a couple over. Let's see, do we have anything? Good stuff, guys. Great selection this week. Thank you very much. Who won the Omega Watch? People still asking who won the Omega Watch.
We know who won the Omega Watch, but if you won, answer that email, because I want to give you a vintage moon watch, but you got to get back to us.
So, as always, thank you guys for watching the show tonight. My name is Brian.
I'm Tim.
This is Tim. This is the Watch Insider. Thank you guys for logging on.